Have you ever closed your eyes and imagined what it must have been like to live in a castle during the Middle Ages? Well, tonight, you got the chance to do exactly that. You entered the royal halls, felt the heaviness of the crown, and discovered that being a medieval king or queen was not as easy as it might have seemed. But before we continue, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on any of our exciting stories. Thanks for your support. Now let's go back to the Middle Ages. The king or queen wasn't just a ruler, they were the center of the universe around them. Their word was law. The nobility thrived because of the king's favor. The kingdom's strength depended on the king's decisions. The queen was the mother of heirs, the manager of the home front, and the king's partner in governance. So what was it actually like to be king or queen in medieval times? Let's find out. First off, medieval kings and queens had to deal with a lot of people vying for their attention. Nobles always wanted something from the crown, land, titles, favors, and sometimes even the throne itself. Then there were advisors, clergy members, and diplomats. Each group had its own agenda, and the king and queen had to navigate them all without losing power. It was like walking a tightrope, except the fall was much higher. For instance, think about Eleanor of Aquitaine. She was born into power as the heiress of one of the wealthiest regions in France. She first married King Louis VII of France, but that didn't work out. So she married Henry II of England. With these strategic marriages, she didn't just gain power, she became a key player in shaping the future of two kingdoms. However, that came with a lot of tension. Louis wanted a docile queen, someone who wouldn't challenge his authority. Eleanor didn't fit that bill. She was intelligent, headstrong, and politically savvy. She couldn't just be a pretty face at the royal court. On the other hand, Henry too had ambitions for Eleanor. He wanted her to manage his lands while he went on crusade. Again, she couldn't just be a trophy wife. Eleanor was a queen who played the game of medieval royalty, and she played it well. She wielded power, raised children who became famous monarchs, and even survived imprisonment at the hands of her own husband. Being a medieval monarch also meant you had to worry about appearances. Kings and queens were expected to look the part, to wear fine clothes, to hold themselves well, and to be the epitome of wealth and power. But it wasn't just about looking good. It was about conveying a message. A queen in flowing robes and a crown was a symbol of her kingdom's prosperity, of the king's loyalty, and of the divine right to rule. The clothes were a kind of armor, not made of metal, but of silk and velvet. Think about Empress Matilda. She wasn't born to be a warrior. But when her cousin Stephen took the throne that rightfully belonged to her son Henry, she turned into one. Despite the societal pressure to be a demure and submissive queen, Matilda proved that she was capable of leading armies, negotiating with nobles, and surviving a civil war. In fact, she was so determined to secure the throne for her son that she fought for decades. But despite her efforts, she never wore the crown she was entitled to. Instead, Stephen sat on the throne while Matilda led rebellions from afar. This was the harsh reality of medieval royalty. Even if you were born to rule, you might not get the chance. Medieval royalty was a full-time job. Kings and queens had to be involved in every aspect of ruling, from making laws to settling disputes, from planning for the future to dealing with the day-to-day. There was no such thing as a vacation or retirement. The king or queen ruled until their death, and even then, their legacy lived on. Take King Louis IX of France, for example. He wasn't just a king, he was considered a saint. Louis was deeply religious, saw his role as ordained by God, a duty to uphold justice and care for his people. He reformed French law, promoted trade, and built hospitals. He was also a crusader, a fighter for the Christian cause. So being a medieval monarch meant more than just holding power. It meant being a beacon of hope, justice, and faith. Louis might have worn a crown, but he also carried the weight of religious devotion on his shoulders. And let's not forget the external pressures. Medieval royalty was a high-stakes game. There were rival kingdoms, ambitious nobles, and outside threats. The king or queen had to constantly be on guard, ready to defend their people, their land, and their legacy. It was a life of duty, honor, and danger. Consider Edward III of England. He was a warrior king. He fought in the Battle of Crecy, one of the most important battles in medieval history. He defeated the Scots at the Battle of Bannockburn. He laid siege to the city of Calais. Under his rule, England and France fought a long and bloody war over the French throne. So while Edward enjoyed hunting, hawking, and managing his lands, he was also a warrior king. Couldn't escape the call of battle. Edward's story shows how medieval royalty wasn't just about luxury and leisure. It was about leading armies, making tough choices, and facing the enemy. Now let's talk about the perks of the job. Being a medieval monarch meant you had access to the finest things in life. Palaces, art, luxury items, and the best food. It was a life of relative safety, at least compared to the common folk. And you had the opportunity to make a lasting impact. Think about the buildings, the laws, or the works of art commissioned by kings and queens. They left a mark on history. They created jobs, and they contributed to the culture of their time. But here's the catch. This golden life came with a heavy price. Kings and queens had to constantly worry about their safety. There were plots, assassinations, and rebellions. And even if you weren't directly threatened, the stress of ruling could take a toll on your health. Add to that the emotional burden of knowing that your decisions affected hundreds of thousands of people. The responsibility of shaping an entire kingdom wasn't for the faint of heart. Medieval royalty was a mixed bag. It had its privileges, but it was far from a fairy tale. Sure, there were fancy clothes, luxurious feasts, and grand palaces, but there was also the constant threat of war, the burden of making tough decisions, and the pressure of upholding an image. In the end, medieval royalty was a high-risk, high-reward proposition. Not everyone could handle it, and not everyone wanted it. But for those who did, well, the rewards were immeasurable. What do you think? Would you have liked to be a medieval king or queen? How would you handle the pressures and challenges of the job? Let us know in the comments below. As we come to the end of this journey through medieval royalty, remember that the kings and queens of that era were real people. They had hopes, fears, and dreams just like us. They made mistakes, faced challenges, and tried their best to leave a legacy behind. The next time you hear the word medieval, don't just think of knights and castles. Think of the people who lived and breathed in that era, who loved and lost, who won and failed. They were the architects of history, and their stories deserve to be told and remembered. So if you enjoyed this journey, hit the like button and share it with a friend. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on our stories. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.